Hello, beautiful people. To steal the Pat McAfee line, it's Senior Bowl week, and I have spent no less than the last 48 hours just digging deep into Senior Bowl tape. I'm Jeremy Greene of the Sportsocracy.com, and this is our Senior Bowl preview, and by our, I mean me. There's no Tank because he's not here yet. I have been, obviously, David Smith and I from Armchair Commentary, we will be doing a Senior Bowl live stream. We did this last year. Basically, it's a lot like our live watch-alongs. If you were with us for the conference championship games, we obviously can't show you the game because that's a copyright thing. They get very angry about that, so we can't do that. So what we do is we sync up our stream with yours as things happen. We will talk about it in the hopes that we can get you as ready as humanly possible for the 2023 NFL Draft. So what we're going to do here, if you have any questions about specific players, throw them in the chat. I will answer them. There have been some players that really helped themselves this week. There have been some players that maybe missed an opportunity, and we'll get into as many of those as we can. Obviously, the starting off point with any game like this is the quarterbacks. And let me be as honest with you as I can possibly be. The quarterbacks in this game suck a lot. And that's me being as nice as I can. The highest rated quarterback I have in this game is Jaren Hall. The second highest rated quarterback is Malik Cunningham, who was a late addition to this game to replace, I think, Hendon Hooker. Or he may have replaced Will Levis. And he has probably been the second best quarterback here. The others in the game, Jake Haener from Fresno State, I see him as a 6th, 7th round pick. He's an older kid. Cunningham probably goes somewhere in the neighborhood of the late 5, early 6. Jaren Hall's one of the most interesting evaluations in this class because I can't really put my thumb on him. I can't definitively figure out. He's so athletic, and that will give him a spot in this league. I've heard him compared to Tyler Huntley a lot this week. Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. If you didn't watch the Pro Bowl games, you didn't miss much. Long drive was fun. Rest of it was really disjointed. But those are your quarterbacks for the national team. Looking at the American team, Clayton Tune from Houston that I don't have a draftable grade on. Hendon Hooker, he's actually the highest rated quarterback here, but with the injury, he obviously won't be able to play. I think that might be the most interesting quarterback evaluation in this entire class. The thing you have to remember about Hendon Hooker is that he had a late round grade on him until he was 2 to 3 years older than every player he was playing against. I always skew those guys on the safer side. I would say he probably falls in somewhere late in day 2. I've had him pegged to New Orleans for some reason, pretty much since the start of this process. Just seems to me as a spot that would fit because I do think he is a player that can come in and play right away. I just don't think the high side is ever that high. I know I've had a few people ask if he could be the long-term backup to Lamar Jackson. I mean, I could see it. I just think that's a heavy investment for where you're going to have to take him. The other quarterback that is here, two of them, Tyson Bagent from Shepherd, he's had a couple throws that made me think maybe he could be a priority undrafted free agent. Other than that, he just looks like a roster filler guy and probably nothing more than that. Then there's the most interesting quarterback that has been here because he's been very up and down, very high and low, and I can't figure out exactly where he's going to go, and that's Max Duggan out of TCU. I don't have a draftable grade on him. He's a priority undrafted free agent for me, but there have been times in Mobile that he has looked like he could be – I mean, he's a career backup at best, but he could be a player that you see – I mean, I've heard him as high as the 4th round. To me, that's insanity. If you take him before the 6th, I think you did it wrong. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of high-level quarterback play in this game. Not a lot of guys that you really have to deep dive into, and that's the heads or tails of the quarterback position. I hate to just shat upon it as aggressively as I did, but that's just really where it sits. This is not a good year at the quarterback position with Will Levis opting out and cowboy hat Stetson Bennett not appearing so he could go get drunk and knock on doors in Dallas. Looking into the YouTube chat, are there any NC State players this year in the Reese's Senior Bowl? There are not. There are a few that are draftable. Corey Durden out of the defensive tackle, he's the highest one to me. And that's just off the top of my head. I like him a lot. I think he's got an early day 3 grade as a rotational defensive tackle. That's the highest rated NC State player that I have. G-Baby asks, what should Las Vegas do at quarterback for 2023? Excuse me. Las Vegas is an interesting question in this draft. And that gets into quarterbacks that are not here in Mobile. In the first round, you're going to have some combination of Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and I think all 3 of them go in the top 5. From everything I've been told, there is nobody that is giving that Godfather offer to the Chicago Bears to get up to 1 because they're also scared of what they're going to get in Bryce Young. He is smaller. He's polished as a passer. He just doesn't have the huge, gigantic deep ball arm that you would necessarily be looking for. So that's Bryce Young's one of those evaluations that is interesting to me, and I think he completely shapes the way the draft goes. I have him going to Chicago, which in turn would have Houston take C.J. Stroud because he is the next safest quarterback. Will Levis would then go 4 to Indianapolis. I hear they're very high on him. The thing that would make me nervous is that if you're a Raider fan, is that I have heard Josh McDaniel and the GM whose name went right out of my head is really high on Anthony Richardson. So that's just something to know. As we've gone through this process, I am more convinced now than I have ever been that Anthony Richardson will go in the top 15, whether he should or not. And from there, you get into Tanner McKee, Hendon Hooker. I don't think Hooker can go anywhere. I don't think he can go anywhere earlier than the 3rd round. So this is one of those years that you're going to have to get on the quarterback boat early. And I'm just not all that. I'm not convinced that the Raiders aren't going to be the team that we walk away from this going, how in the hell did you take Anthony Richardson at 7?
There's no laws in this place. Anything goes.
Colin with the MVP gift donation of Sportsocracy memberships. We appreciate you greatly. We could genuinely not do this without any of you. And Colin, the MVP, just checking out memberships. It's because he a dog. Speaking of dogs, we've had a few dogs around Mobile this week that I feel like have really helped themselves and gotten into the first round conversation. Number 1, John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota. I've talked about this kid for 2 solid years. I have not been able to figure out why the rest of the industry is not as high on him. Then he went to Mobile and just ate lunch boxes. I'm talking sandwich, cookie, chips, note from mom, and he shoved it up your ass. He was just a big old D-O-double-G dog. And I genuinely think that now Schmitz has played himself in Mobile into the back end of the first round conversation. I would say at worst he falls into the beginning of the second. And he is, I said he is a step below what Tyler Linderbaum was last year. That's a narrative that you're going to have to get used to with this draft class because virtually everything is a step below what it was last year except the quarterback position. Last year's the worst quarterback class I've ever evaluated, and it's not even close. I had Sam Howell as the no doubt 1. If Sam Howell was in this class, I would have him as the 4. So that should just tell you where we're at quarterback. Every other position outside of running back, because there is a high-end running back in this class in Bijan Robinson, everything else, you're getting guys that are the 1 in this class that would have been the 3 last year. I don't have that much higher of a grade on Will Anderson than I had on Trayvon Walker last year. That's not a slight at Will Anderson. I think they both have really highs, and I'm afraid that some people will be disappointed by them. So I see a guy like John Michael Schmitz, who doesn't necessarily play the most high-value position, but has played himself into the conversation, getting into the back end of the first round with the way he's played this week. Another player that must be talked about, Tennessee offensive tackle Darnell Wright. He's one of the longest players I've ever seen. And you look at the tape, there were some inconsistencies that I'm not going to say they had soured me completely, but I wasn't as high on him as others. But his week this week got me to go back and look at the tape, and I like a lot of what I see. I think he's a borderline first-round pick. He's a top 50 pick, no doubt. And now I'm looking at the offensive line class a little differently because I do think you have the high side with Peter Skoronski, who is just super safe. And then there are a lot of other guys that you're going to see varying grades on, but they're all high-level talents. I don't have a button big enough for that. So
I'm your huckleberry. I'm your huckleberry. I'm your huckleberry.
Colin with the gigantic donation in the chat. Colin, we need to just get you in here and just make you the official third of this here program because you're just the real MVP. He asked, who are the top 20 players in the Reese's Senior Bowl to watch? All right, so I'm going to go down the rosters and just this is off the cuff because I didn't plan on going that deep, but when you throw a super chat out like that, well, looks like I'm gonna. Guys that I have that are guys I really want to watch. Oluwatimi from Michigan. That goes into the John Michael Schmitz thing that I had just said. I have liked him the entire time. I've thought he was a second-day pick anyway, so that's one to watch. I'm not going to do a lot of linemen here, obviously, because that's not the one to watch. That gets more into nerds like me that are sitting around watching lineman tape. So if you're looking for one-on-one matchups to look for, a guy that helped himself a lot this week, Mekhi Blackman, the corner out of USC, he had a phenomenal week. He went from – I thought he was a no-doubt third-day guy. He's probably played himself into second-day conversation. And there are so many receivers, which leads me into my answer to Colin's question. The thing I'm going to be looking at in this game specifically, it's not going to be the end result of the play. I want to watch how these receivers can get open, how they move. Do they get open in the one-on-ones? So far this week, Grant DeBose from Charlotte and Ronnie Bell have just looked slightly out of place. They didn't look as good as maybe I wanted them to, and I think it's possible because how many other receivers have looked so good. Jaden Reed out of Michigan State, I'm going to be locked in. You will hear Armchair and I talk a lot about him over the course of the game because I want to see how he gets open in the games. He's been unguardable in one-on-ones. So if he can translate that into the game, I could easily see that making him a back end of the top 50, late 2, early 3. Puka Nacua from BYU, he's the other receiver on the national team that I'm really locked into. I like Trey Palmer from Nebraska. Michael Wilson from Stanford. These are all guys that have had good weeks in some shape, form, or fashion. I just want to see how they translate to the game. Then you look at the American side, Nathaniel Tank Dell, one of the guys that you're going to meet very soon, the sideline scout, a guy that's helping me do a lot of our pre-draft process things. He's very high on Tank Dell, and he has had a tremendous week, had a really good – and you got to be careful with this. This is a good example of what I'm talking about with being careful with Senior Bowl tape. He had an unbelievable rep against Helms from Alabama. The only problem is Helms is a box safety, so he's never going to be left out one-on-one to defend a receiver. So you have to be careful with how open he was because Helms looked terrible, but that's not what he does. So you have to watch the feet, and Tank Dell just ate his lunchbox. So he's a player I'm really locked into going into tomorrow. Andrea Iasivas, a guy I've talked about from Princeton, gives me some very poor man's Christian Watson vibes. I think that's a That's a player that a smart team is going to take in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and a year from now, he's going to be a guy you're picking up in week 15 of your fantasy leagues because he's had 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, and people are wondering where this kid came from. He's very raw, but when you get the ball in his hands, good things happen. Other receivers on this team, and I'm telling you, this is how deep this class is. Dontavian Wicks from Virginia, he's had a good week. He's been overshadowed slightly by guys like Tank Dell and Jonathan Mingo that's on his own team from Ole Miss, who I'll talk about in a second. But he's a guy I'm looking to in the game. Again, not for the end result of the play. I want to see how you get open when you're being schemed against in a game, because you have done very well in one-on-ones, which shows me you have the ability to get open. I just want to see you do it in the game. And then the final guy, not the final guy I'll mention, but Rice from SMU. A lot of people are higher on him than I am. It's not that I don't like him. It's just I feel like a lot of other kids in this class have vaulted themselves up, and Rice has kind of stayed exactly where I thought he was. So I'm not as wild about him as other people are, but he is definitely a player to watch this week in the Senior Bowl game. Final receiver, Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. Been a bit of a disappointment this week, but I firmly believe that's because of how good everyone else has been and less about how bad he has been. I think this kid's a player in the league. The big knock on him right now is he fast enough to play special teams early on in his career in the NFL? That'll be something to watch, and that'll be something to watch at the Combine, which we are going to be all over. I want to go back through the chat and make sure I didn't miss anything. Colin throwing out just bags because he's a dog, and want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Divine Comedy. If you get a moment or saw the tape, would be fascinated on your Gervon Dexter, Kalijah Cansey assessments. The tape on Kalijah Cansey is better. The problem is 5'10". I mean, he'll measure high 5'10", low 5'11". If he was 6'2", he's a top 15 pick. Mel Kiper put him at 10, and to me, that's complete lunacy. I'm seeing Gervon Dexter going in the mid-2s to early 3s, and to me, that's insane. I like Mozzie Smith better from Michigan, but for me, Gervon Dexter is he's right there as a 2 in terms of the big body, not Jalen Carter, not Tyree Wilson, not guys that can play on the outside, play on the inside. In terms of the big-bodied run stuffer in the middle, I would say Gervon Dexter is my 2. I see Kalijah Cansey more as that Jalen Carter end in a 3-4. That's where I think he fits best. I mean, look, I think he's a back end of the first, beginning of the second pick. But this all of a sudden fascination with Kalijah Cansey doesn't make any sense to me because the tape was always good. It was the measurables that were always going to ding him. Armchair said Jared Patterson, DeJuan Jones. DeJuan Jones is literally the longest player in the history of the Senior Bowl, wingspan-wise. Jared Patterson, not a great week. I feel like he has fallen behind Oluwatimi, significantly behind John Michael Schmitz. He needs to have a good combine process. It has not started well for him. That doesn't mean that it won't end well for him. I'm just curious to see how he goes through the process. Armchair, my partner for the Senior Bowl coverage tomorrow, asked about my coverage of the tight ends. Ironic you asked that because that is part of my next answer to Colin's original question. I think this tight end class is special. And this week you've had one guy in Luke Musgrave from Oregon State that I think has distanced himself. Now it's a 3-horse race at tight end. You got Michael Mayer, the kid from Notre Dame, that is not here. Then you get into Luke Musgrave, Dalton Kincaid from Utah. That's a 3-horse race at tight end, and frankly, I could see any of the 3 of them being first-round picks, and that would be perfectly okay. I love this class. And I'm going to go even a little deeper than others have. There are a couple. Payne Durham from Purdue has had a really good week. That's a kid to keep an eye on tomorrow that Armchair and I will talk about more. And then there's one, and, maybe I'm being a little hard on Miami. I feel like they screwed Will Mallory, and he is so much better of a player. I get this is going to sound weird when I say it. I get very Mark Andrews vibes from Will Mallory, and I feel like a smart team is going to take him, and the next thing we know, he's going to be one of the 10 best tight ends in the league. I just see the raw. I understand he got a little doughy. He's not the greatest blocker, blah, 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 blah. I get it. The talent is there, and it's undeniable. I just feel like he was used incorrectly. Let's we got another one of these.
I'm your huckleberry. I'm your huckleberry. I'm your huckleberry.
That's from Colin. He said, I'd love to join the show, talk football with you in Armchair. Just let me know what you use for talking on stream, but much love for all the content. I'm ready for the draft after the Super Bowl. We appreciate you more than we could ever say there, Colin, with another gigantic super chat. So what we use for the show stream is OBS. So if you have Zoom, anything like that, if anybody wants to get involved in the draft, the Senior Bowl coverage tomorrow, you're literally the click of a button. I just drag you in. So if you have a webcam, you got to have a mic set up and things like that because you have to be on your own independent stream. But that's how we bring in Armchair. He's got a set up in his office. We bring him in, and then we just overlay him on top of the thing. So anybody's got some time tomorrow, wants to be involved, I'm not averse to that at all. Maybe we get a little gallery right there on the right, some reactions. I'm in for all those things. Whew. That was 22 solid minutes of me talking. I need a little sip of my drinky drink here. Oh, and that was only offensive, guys. I really haven't hardly mentioned anybody from the defensive side. Now, here's the other. If you ever want to know how big of a nerd I am, I can't really spin the camera around to show you this, but I don't have any information on the players that I just listed. It's literally just the roster in front of me. I use these as almost like practice reps for getting ready for the draft because I don't like being caught off guard by anybody on draft night. All right, one position left among the skill position guys, that's running back. This is not it's not a great class of running backs, but there are a few I would like to talk about. Chris Rodriguez has not had the greatest week. I think he has now been pushed into day 3 consideration. Eric Gray from Oklahoma, he has been pretty good. Little inconsistent, but he's been good. To me, the best running back that I have seen this week is Kenny McIntosh, and it's not really all that close. I like Tajay Sharp, and I actually think he's a better prospect. This week in Mobile, Kenny McIntosh has been the best running back on the field. I will be interested to see him in the game. I think he is not exclusively a receiving back. I said that the other day, and I thought about it after I said it. He's not only a receiving back. He could become a 3-down back in the league. I don't really see it. I think he comes in that James White-type role, and he just really carves it out, and he's so good at it that that's what he ends up doing in the long term. Other running backs to look at, Roschon Johnson broke his hand earlier this week. He was having a good week, and I think even with the hand, my hope is that he can still run at the combine. He obviously won't be able to do drills, but I hope he'll at least be able to run to get the numbers on tape. If not, we'll be looking to the pro day. He was the kid behind Bijan Robinson, so this was a really big week for him, and he made the most of it before he broke his hand. Chase Brown from Illinois, he's a day 2 guy, late day 2 guy for me, somebody to keep an eye on. Cameron Peoples from Appalachian State, he's a later round guy that I think could be a nice little find. And then Evan Hull. This kid does everything. He took Wildcat snaps at Northwestern. He's just a little Swiss Army knife. Kind of reminds me of a smaller Rex Burkhead. And I think that's the role he's going to have in the NFL, is just a do-everything kind of guy. I'm going to quickly tap on a couple offensive linemen that I just want to mention. Blake Freeland from BYU, had a very up-and-down week. Wasn't necessarily as impressive as I wanted it to be. He will be one that I'm watching for in live repetitions in the Senior Bowl to see if he holds up better when the line's intact than he does in the one-on-ones. Jalen Duncan, I'm going to say this kid's name 500 times between now and draft week. I love him. I think he's going to be a great player in this league. He's a little raw, and that's what everybody bangs on him about. There's going to be a lot of this in this draft class because it's not the greatest class we've ever seen. and Cody Mauch, who is from North Dakota State. And if you've never seen his transformation from freshman tight end, he was 6'5", 222 pounds. Now he's 6'6", 315, and he's missing his 2 front teeth. And he is a wild man, and I love him. Somebody asked me about him with a picture on Twitter, and I said Cody Mauch is the kind of guy that drinks the domestic light and then eats the can and then does it again and again and again and again and again. He's just the kind of player I want on my team. He's somebody I'm really locked into watching. And then American lineman, Tyler Steen is a guy I need to talk about. 4-year starter in the SEC, started at Vanderbilt, moved on to Alabama. This is a big week for him. There are some people talking about him in the back end of the first round. That's a little rich for my blood, but I do see a path that he could end up being an early second-day pick, early second-round guy for a team that needs a player right away. I really would like him with the Chicago Bears because I think he's a player that's ready to play right away. Osiris Torrance from Florida has been the biggest human on the field all week long, and it hasn't been that close. He's got some of the biggest legs I've ever seen. The base on him is just incredible. I think there is a path. He's a no-doubt first-rounder to me. I could see a path that he sneaks into the top 20. That's probably as high as he could go. I've had him just circled to Seattle at 20 for as long as I can remember, and he's done nothing this week to make me think that that's incorrect. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, guys that have had specifically very good weeks. Sidney Brown, it's Chase Brown's brother from Illinois. He's had a good week. I think he's played himself into – he's probably bumped himself up a round. I think he went from the 4th probably into the 3rd. Will McDonald from Iowa State. This is a kid that I think is going to get first-round consideration. The knock on him is that he's probably going to be too small to be a 3-down in and out, down in, down out edge rusher. He's a situational guy. I've said for 2 years now, he reminds me of Elvis Doomerville if Elvis Doomerville was 3 inches taller. So he is a little thin, needs to be able to add bulk to the frame, and I'm not sure he's ever going to be able to do that and it not take away what got him here. But even with that, I'm just not sure I care. He can do exactly what it is that you want him to do. A couple questions in the YouTube chat, Divine Comedy. Think Darnell Washington can become an NFL quality tight end, or is he going to end up an offensive line project? He's definitely a tight end. I think he's a second-round guy. My current projection is that we're going to have 4 tight ends go in the first 2 rounds, and I think Darnell Washington will be the last of the 4. I originally had him at 2. Kincaid and Musgrave have now passed him. And Ascendo said Cody Mauch's a hockey player who got lost on his way to the NHL. Bingo. That's exactly right. He got lost on his way to the NHL, bulked up, and now he's just a fucking house, which I'm here for. Oh, we got another one of these. I'm telling you, Colin like won the lottery or something.
I'm your huckleberry. I'm your huckleberry. I'm your huckleberry.
He said, because I love the show, one day I'll join, but with me working much of the time and having only Friday, Monday, and Tuesday off, we can work out a time one day. If you had to pick one player for the Senior Bowl, which one will be in day 1 of the NFL draft? I'll give you several of them because I think you've got – last year I think it was 72% of players drafted in the draft were in Mobile. If you took out the first round, where I think there were 14, the middle 2 rounds on day 2, there were only 5 guys, I think, total that didn't show up in Mobile. So there's going to be a lot of really good ones. Guys that I can tell you definitively are going to go on day 1. Osiris Torrance from Florida. He is definitively going to go in round 1. Definitively. I'm very sure Jalen Duncan's going to go in round 1, and he should. From there, it gets a little dicey because now the Shrine Bowl is kind of catching up to the Senior Bowl, and so you're getting some players at the Shrine Bowl that are better than what you're used to. So there's not as many day 1 players in this. I will say John Michael Schmitz. He has played himself into first-round consideration. Andre Carter, who we'll talk about in a minute. I don't see him that high, but someone might. We'll talk about him momentarily. Byron Young from Tennessee, he could go in the first round. I don't think he will, but he could. And then you get into the two linemen, DeJuan Jones and Darnell Wright. If I had to pick one, it's John Michael Schmitz. He's going to be in my top 20. Straight up, he's going to be in my top 20 when it comes out as we go down the line. So just a ton of players in this game that will be really intriguing to watch. The position I haven't really talked about yet, other than Will McDonald, is the edge guys. A lot of guys really helped their stock this week, and probably nobody helped themselves more than Keon White from Georgia Tech. That program has sucked for years. Keon White came in, did exactly what he needed to do. There was already a lot of talk about him in the first place. Then he came in this week and did all of the things he needed to do. I'll be looking to see him in the game. He strikes me as a guy that's very scheme versatile, can play defensive tackle, can play on the outside in a 3-4. I could see him going in the first round. I think people are getting they're getting lost in the hype and putting him in I think I saw him at 21 earlier. That's too high for me. I cannot go that high, but I do think he is a solid value. Beginning of the second round is where I would really like to see him. Keanu Benton's a kid we talked about on the ESPN radio show. He's just a squatty bull of a dude, and I think he's going to come into the league and be really, really good. Isaiah Foskey is somebody to keep eyes on because there are two edge players in this draft that get really discrepant grades. One of them's Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame. The other is Miles Murphy from Clemson. They're love-hate guys. The guys that love them. The guys that don't, they just don't get it. I mean, there are teams that have second-round grades on Miles Murphy. There are teams that have third-round grades on Isaiah Foskey. So you're going to see those guys are going to go at some point. Miles Murphy, I think, still goes in the top 10, but he'll be that player in the top 10 that the teams that were out on him look at whoever takes him and go, nah, you're going to regret that you did that. There's been some Cleveland Farrell comparisons there. And Foskey, he just doesn't move as well as I want him to. He kind of runs like he's got a 2x4 in his ass. And that is unsettling to me when you look around at all of the other players that are that the bend is so good. I'll even tell you another guy that's here, KJ Henry. I think he bends better. DeMarvion Overshown, he has been a wild man. He's a linebacker, not an edge. But he's been a wild man at times this week. And then you get into Andre Carter. The big knock on him, level of competition, he plays really high, and because he's 6'7". So to me, he's an outside linebacker exclusively, stand up in the 3-4, and that's his future in the NFL. I would project him in the second round. Guy to watch on this is the American team. Byron Young, who I already mentioned, there are two of those. One of them played at Alabama, one of them played at Tennessee. So that's going to get incredibly confusing as we go along. But a guy to watch in the game, Derek Hall from Auburn. I really like the tape on him. It didn't have the most electric week, so I would look for him to try to make a splash in the game. Isaiah Land from Florida A&M, without a doubt, the highest-rated HBCU player in this draft. Somebody I'm interested to see in this game. And then there was another, Ali Gay. Ali Gay is a player that never lived up to the potential at LSU. I want to see what he does in the pre-draft process. He's going to be, if you've been with us for a long time, you remember the Jabril Cox thing of he fell because of medical. Ali Gay is going to fall because the tape just never lives up to the talent. And I guarantee you we're saying his name for an extended period of time. Last position group that we'll talk about here to get us ready for the Senior Bowl. I appreciate all of you joining in with the live stream. If you have any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. Satisfied Browns fan said, are we still having the 3 o'clock show? Yes, we are. Asheville Police Chief David Zach will be joining us at 3 o'clock to talk about Tom Brady, the Buffalo Bills, Aaron Rodgers, all the good things that Tank and I have talked about this week. We're going to get his opinions on it, make some jokes, have some laughs, kill a little time. Then we'll do the last 2 hours of the show, and Armchair and I will be live tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern time for the kickoff of the Senior Bowl. There will be one spot where I have to run out for about 8 minutes, and then I'll come back. It's probably at the end of the game, but we'll be here bell to bell for the Senior Bowl. One position that has not shown itself particularly well this week, because there's really not a lot of these guys. Darius Rush out of South Carolina had one really good day, so he's one that needs to be mentioned. This is at corner in the secondary. Jamie Robinson has had a really good week, and I think now has solidified himself into second-round consideration. DeMarco Hellams has shown that he is, without a doubt, a box safety. I'm not going to say that hurt him, because I think anybody that had watched him in the past already knew that. So I don't think he hurt himself. He's had some bad reps that have been less than ideal. Riley Moss from Iowa has had a good week on film to me. Caillou Blue Kelly and Mekhi Blackman, who I mentioned earlier from USC. And Evan Doyle will have an infarction if I don't mention that Riley Moss will be the first white starting corner in the NFL in the last 20 years when he gets drafted, and he's going to. So Riley Moss he's a good player. He's got some physical limitations, but he's had a good week here as well. If there's anybody I didn't talk about, feel free to throw those in the chat. I actually see that Evan Doyle, who I just mentioned, did that very thing. He's talking about Joe Mixon. We're going to talk about that on the show today. I have a dedicated take there that I'm not going to dive into, but he said Spears or Gibbs time incoming. I think that's we don't know a lot about the Mixon thing. That broke last night, so I really need to dive deep on what happened, what do we know, what are we assuming, what are we thinking. So then he asked, is Steve Avila a third-rounder like PFF says, or do you think he'll rise up boards? I think he's going to rise up boards. I like Steve Avila a lot because I think he can play several different positions on the line. So I would say if he does go in the third round, it's going to be very early. He's the lineman out of TCU. He's been here this week. Hasn't done anything that's really rocked my world. But he's also an interior lineman. It's kind of hard for them to do that. The tackles and the edge guys are what you really see shine through in these practices. So I'm not going to say he's hurt himself this week, but I don't think he's helped himself. What will help him is when the scouts get in there and start really digging in on the tape. I think they're going to see a lot to like. Ascendo asked, anyone liking Deuce Vaughn? I am, and I don't care that he's 4'3". He is electric with the ball in his hands. He's a very good player, and he has a spot in this league. The Darren Sproles comparison is really lazy because they're both short, but it's very apt, and they both went to Kansas State. So I think that's kind of where he falls in. That's probably a 4th, 5th round pick. I don't necessarily think he'll go any higher than that, but he is somebody that has a spot in the league. Stephen Tao said we need a don't do crimes from Chief Zach. I've asked that multiple times, and he's always said it could get him in trouble, which we don't want to do that. We love Chief Zach, and we appreciate him for donating his time to come in here and talk with two formerly fat idiots about sports. Colin said, no circling the wagons like the Kansas City Chiefs. I need you to say this one time because you doubted my Chiefs all year. Nobody circles the wagons like the Kansas City Chiefs. By the end of tomorrow, this voice is going to be a little worse for the wear. All right. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I just ran my mouth for 40 minutes by myself, which if you ever doubt that Jeremy likes to talk, just understand that I ran my mouth for 40 minutes with no notes. So I want to give big props to Colin for the phenomenal super chats. Oh, I see there are questions coming, so I'll hang on for a sendo. So big thanks to Colin for the tremendous amount of super chats. We do not in any way expect those things, or we're always shocked when they happen. They do help greatly, and we appreciate you so much for those. The question I'm seeing right now is Evan Doyle that said there's only one Virginia Tech player in the draft, and it's Chamari Connor. Asked how I would grade him, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have his grade pulled up, so give me just a second. And I will tell you where I have him graded. He is the safety. I've got him as a priority undrafted free agent. With him, it's going to depend on how he runs. He's not quite as big as I want him to be. He's like 6 foot, about 200 pounds. If he runs in the low 4.4s, he could get into that 6th, 7th round territory. He was a really good prospect coming out. He's another one of those that could fall into the did they not use him appropriately, because that's entirely possible. But I currently have a priority undrafted free agent grade on him. Gage Camplin asked best position group at the Senior Bowl. Wide receiver is real damn good. Running back's been good. Interior offensive line has been good. So I would go wide receiver, tight end, running back, interior offensive line. And then edge guys. The edge guys have been really, really good. Ascendo asked basically what I was talking about the other day. Where does each team go from Mobile? Who is the diamond that each team can or should grab? So, ironic you asked that. Next week we have discovered that there are there's a great call for mock drafts. So next week I will be doing individual NFL team 3-round mock drafts. Guys that I know you talked to at the Senior Bowl or had some interest in, or fit your scheme, or whatever the case may be. So I'll do those individually. They'll go out on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook Reels, Shorts, and into a full video. My plan is to do 7 to 8 minutes per team with a couple shorts with each individual one. Specifically highlighting one player and then a deep dive in a more long form. So that's the next 3 months of my life are going to be consumed with doing content. So I promise you, you will not be at this will be a year that if you follow us here in the Sportsocracy, you will be as ready for the 2023 NFL Draft as you could possibly be, which reminds me to tell you that on February the 20th, that is 2 weeks from this Monday, I bought NFLDraft.net. I did it last year. I didn't have enough time to get everything done the way I wanted it to. This year I've outsourced some of the things. It's not going to look like ESPN's website where everything is chronicled and stuff like that. This is easily consumable, less text, more video, more individual team breakdowns and things like that, and then individual videos on each player. We're starting with the top 100 players in the NFL Draft. So on February 20th, my top 100 for the 2023 NFL Draft will drop. I will drop another 100 on the 20th of every month. So March 20th, you'll get 101 to 200. April 20th, you'll get 201 to 300. And so we'll have individual team video or prospect videos for every player that I think gets drafted in the 2023 NFL Draft. Ascendo asked, any guess who the Jets are drilling over? Tyler told me they were very in love with Cody Mauch at the Senior Bowl, which lends itself to what I've heard, that they're going to really invest again in the offensive line. Gage said should do it reversed. I would do it that way. So here's the reason that I'm not doing that. It's for SEO purposes, because when people search for mock drafts and things like that, they're looking for who are we going to take in the first, second, third round. It's the loyalists that are looking for 101 to 300, and those searches really hype up in the March, April months. So I agree with you. I should do it the opposite way, but from an SEO and making the most of it, because at the end of the day, this is a business, and it is the only way that we make money. So we try to get the most juice out of the squeeze. So that's the reason we'll be doing it that way. Oh, That's 45 minutes all by myself. It's always good to prove that I could do that if I ever needed to. All right, that has been your Reese's Senior Bowl preview. As I said, me and David Smith from Armchair Commentary will be live at 2 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow. The stream will be up tonight, so you can just bookmark it. You'll know exactly where we're going to be. You can save it. You can like it. You can do whatever you want to. But we will be live with a special edition of Mullet Man and the Can of Dan in Mobile. I appreciate all of you. A special thanks again to Colin for making us feel nice and warm and fuzzy and appreciated. It genuinely means more than we could ever say. I'll see you all again in 2 hours and 14 minutes for our ESPN Radio live show.